Pax quickly stepped forward to ease the awkward situation.
It turns out that there are 5 immortals here. A bit of an overreaction on my part. Treating illnesses is just a simple task for me. Nothing to boast about.
After speaking, he clasped his hands together and looked sincerely at Andrew.
Andrew, you don't have to underestimate yourself. If your family members get sick, feel free to come to me for treatment. I am always ready to help.
Andrew was deeply touched by his sincere gaze. In our family, we have always been treated poorly and criticized by everyone. Even the spirit medium was not invited. We have been looked down upon. Therefore, Andrew is naturally grateful for receiving equal treatment from Pax now. He then bowed to Pax and replied in a solemn tone. Pax was impressed by these words. In the future, he would go through fire and water. As long as you call me Andrew, I am at your command. Upon hearing this, Pax repeatedly waved his hand to refuse. Andrew, don't be so polite. This is what I should do. But before the two could finish complimenting each other, the hemp-clad granny on the side laughed and interrupted, saying,
Don't bother with these polite words. Let's focus on getting things done.
We came this time for 2 reasons. One is for Alice's matter. The other is to hear about the ordeal of your grandson's wife last night. Upon hearing this, Pax couldn't help but show a moment of joy on his face. Could it be that there are developments in both of these matters? Upon hearing this, Roman lowered his head in embarrassment. Pax felt truly sorry. There have been no breakthroughs in the matter concerning the younger sister. The hemp-clad granny beside them also gritted her teeth, her face full of anger. We searched the mass grave for a long time, but that guy seemed to have vanished into thin air, leaving no traces. After hearing this, Pax felt somewhat disappointed, but managed to force a smile and comforted them.
Immortals, your help is already much appreciated by Pax.
Not being able to help Pax not only dimmed the faces of hemp-clad Granny and Roman, but also made the other 4 immortals feel quite embarrassed. At this moment, hemp-clad Granny suddenly said,
Grandson, we've heard about your encounter with the ghost couple in the back mountain of the school. Although we are clueless about Alice's matter, we have a way to solve this.
Ellie on the side covered her mouth and smiled. Pax, the mountain top where the ghost couple resides, happens to fall under the jurisdiction of my yellow family. Leave this matter to us, the yellow family, to take care of and eliminate them. Pax was very surprised to hear this. It's such a coincidence. Thank you, older sister from the yellow family, for your help. But before Pax could finish speaking, Ellie seemed to have realized something. Speaking of which, that ghost couple is also from the same village as Pax, if I remember correctly. Upon hearing this, Pax was suddenly shocked. The first thing that came to his mind was the Thomas family. And after Ellie said that, Andrew also agreed. Those two weren't good people even when they were alive. It's surprising they're not resting peacefully even in death. Upon hearing this, Roman also reminisced about the events of that year. Yes, the red-clothed female ghost who was killed by hemp-clad Granny in the iron coffin 10 years ago was indeed the work of these 2 individuals. It's karma, if you think about it. Their deaths back then were also quite gruesome. It is said that their entire bodies rotted through, and they screamed in agony for days before finally perishing. And when Pax heard what Roman and the others said, he suddenly remembered why the male ghost looked somewhat familiar. It turned out to be an ancestor of the Thomas family. At this moment, Andrew smirked. Back then, this couple was influenced by the evil Taoist's words. They flayed and beat his concubine and sealed her in an iron coffin. Even if that woman was at fault first, this method was too cruel, wasn't it? I guess this was mostly out of jealousy in that evil Taoist's heart. Only then would they come up with such a malicious idea intentionally. Upon hearing this, Luke was puzzled. Why would a Taoist be jealous of a woman? Andrew, on the other hand, lowered his voice and leaned close to Luke's ear. That evil Taoist is also a woman. Moreover, she is particularly ugly. It seems she is jealous of his wife's beauty. Upon hearing this, Ellie's face was full of astonishment. No wonder she felt jealous. The so-called female Taoist priest refers to female Taoists, who practice spiritual activities. Male Taoist refers to a male Taoist priest. Upon hearing the words of several people, Pax couldn't help but think of the events that had happened over the years. From flaying skin to the red-clothed female ghost in the iron coffin, and now the evil Taoist being pointed to, it seems like every incident is connected. Just as Pax was pondering this seriously, Andrew suddenly shouted,
"That's settled."
He was immediately startled and quickly snapped back to his senses, thinking that something had happened again. It turned out that during Pax's momentary daze, the immortals had already discussed their plan. Roman and hemp-clad Granny stayed behind to hold down the fort, while the others went to exterminate the ghost couple haunting the school's backyard to vent their anger on Pax. Upon seeing this, Pax was just about to tell them not to go to such lengths. Before he could speak, he heard a whooshing sound. The four immortals immediately turned into a white smoke and disappeared without a trace, leaving Pax standing there in shock without a chance to speak. At this moment, hemp-clad Granny suddenly looked in the direction of the house and said with a slight smile,
"That kid actually has a pure yang body. No wonder he woke up so quickly."
Her voice raised a bit as she continued,
"Stop peeking and come out."
As soon as the words fell, Nicholas appeared embarrassed, scratching his head as he walked out, indicating that he didn't mean to peek. But hemp-clad Granny and Roman saw his expression, both looking incredulous. Seeing this, Nicholas couldn't help but smile apologetically.
"Granny, what is a pure yang body?"
Upon hearing this, Roman simply smiled faintly. The so-called pure yang body refers to a person born on a pure yang day who possesses this constitution. Its characteristics include a fiery temperament and a strong will, as well as immunity to all evils. Upon hearing this, Nicholas quickly put on a pleasing expression, ran to hemp-clad Granny, and said,
"Granny, this pure yang body sounds so powerful. Can you accept me as your disciple?"
Seeing this, hemp-clad Granny also smiled and agreed. But she had a condition. As soon as the words fell, hemp-clad Granny's face turned extremely grim. It must be death. Nicholas was suddenly frightened by these words, and sat down on the ground in fear. "Granny, I'm easily scared. Please don't scare me." Hemp-clad Granny, however, revealed a somewhat ambiguous smile as she stared at him.
"Don't you want to apprentice under me?"
Upon hearing this, Nicholas quickly hid behind Pax, indicating that he no longer wanted to apprentice. He mentioned that since he hadn't slept well earlier, he would let Pax accompany them first. After saying that, he was about to go back into the room. And hemp-clad Granny burst into laughter at the sight of this lively Nicholas. "This little rascal has truly won my heart." Hearing this, Nicholas immediately stopped in his tracks. His eyes lit up as he turned his head to look at hemp-clad Granny.
"Granny, does this mean you are agreeing to take me as your apprentice?"
But before he could finish speaking, a blinding beam of light suddenly descended from the sky and landed in front of them. Sensing the aura within the beam of light, Roman said softly,
"It's the girls from the yellow family. They've returned."
Upon hearing this, Pax hurriedly went up to greet them. "Have you all worked hard? Did you catch the ghost couple?" Faced with Pax's inquiry, the four great immortals remained silent. Instead, they all looked dejected, even appearing a bit ashamed to see the others. Seeing this, Pax couldn't help but be slightly stunned.
"What happened to you guys? Are you telling me that the four of you are not capable of handling that evil ghost?"
Facing Pax's questioning, Luke sighed helplessly.
"Pax, even if the few of us are not the best, we should be more than capable of dealing with 200-year-old evil ghosts. However, when we got there, we didn't even catch a glimpse of a single evil ghost."
Pax was stunned. How could this be possible? Before the words had even fallen, Ellie took out a pair of human skin lanterns and 2 black hemp ropes and threw them on the ground. "Pax, these 2 things. They were found in the lair of that evil ghost. Just make a confession. I have already informed the head of the family about this matter. Tomorrow he will take action personally. Be sure to catch that evil ghost and hand him over to Pax for disposal." And on the side, hemp-clad Granny picked up a few things. After examining them carefully, she couldn't help but smile mischievously. It turned out to be the handiwork of Mountain Mao, the corpse-binding rope and human skin lantern. Quite extravagant indeed. However, how did these tactics of Mountain Mao end up here with us? Upon hearing the name Mountain Mao, Pax couldn't help but think of something. Could it be that the female Taoist mentioned by Andrew before is using the tactics of Mountain Mao? Is it the evil Taoist who once advised Thomas's ancestors? Upon hearing Pax's analysis, Luke's face was filled with anger. Various signs indicate that it is her. Since the matter was caused by the Thomas family, we will start our investigation at their house tomorrow. If we still can't catch the real culprit behind the scenes, we might as well collectively end it by cutting our necks as immortals. Andrew on the side also nodded in agreement. That's right, otherwise, living would be shameful and embarrassing. Seeing that, Pax felt extremely grateful and thanked everyone with a cupped fist gesture. I'll have to rely on you all then. The next morning, just as the sky was starting to get light, Robert came again the next day. Granny, who is deaf, said,
I'm here to have breakfast.
Seeing this, Granny was puzzled, just as she was about to ask. But suddenly, Nicholas's voice came from behind her.
Are you picking us up for school so early?
Robert gave him an annoyed look.
I don't have time to pick you up. Someone reported that Thomas's grave was dug up.
Upon hearing this, Pax was suddenly shocked. How could this be possible? Nowadays, no one uses valuable items as burial goods, so why would anyone dig up a grave? Upon hearing Pax's confusion, Robert sighed heavily. The strange thing is right here. I just surveyed the scene. Not only was the grave dug into a big hole, even the body inside was gone. And the way it looked didn't seem like it was dug by someone. It actually looked like the body inside climbed out by itself. Even more bizarrely, after I led people to follow the footprints all the way, the footprints disappeared in front of Thomas's house. Now I don't know how to write my investigation report. Deaf Granny was taken aback after hearing Robert's explanation. She quickly asked him to take her to the scene. Upon hearing this, Robert was also stunned. Does it mean that you are implying that there is dirt there? Deaf Granny, however, shook her head uncertainly. Whether it is or isn't, we'll only know once we go and take a look. In no time, several people rushed to the scene of the incident. Thomas's wife was kneeling on the ground at this time, crying bitterly with a broken heart. Who on earth committed such a cruel murder? They didn't even let my husband Thomas rest in peace. You must seek justice for him if you have any knowledge in the afterlife. Beside her, Kai was trying hard to persuade his mother, with tears streaming down his face. They suddenly looked up and saw Robert leading a group of people walking towards them. She quickly stepped forward and tearfully pleaded,
Inspector, you finally arrived. Please make sure to catch that tomb raider and bring peace back to my father.
Robert, seeing the situation, hurried forward to calm her down. But just as the two were talking, Nicholas couldn't help but throw a stone into the cave, wanting to see if it was as Robert had described. Accompanied by a sound, the clear sound of the stone hitting the wooden board rang out. This immediately caught everyone's attention and made them all look at him. The Thomas family looked particularly angry, wanting to rush up and beat him up. Fortunately, Robert explained that this was necessary for the investigation, which calmed the two down. But then, Nicholas turned around and whispered to Pax's ear,
Did you hear that just now? I threw a stone in, but it made a sound as if hitting wood. It means that the dead person inside is really missing.
Pax did not respond to his words, but a sense of foreboding had already surged in his heart. At this moment, Deaf Granny grabbed a handful of soil from the ground. She smelled the soil near her mouth and was suddenly shocked. Robert, who was behind her, noticed the change in Deaf Granny's expression and quickly asked,
Did you find something?
Deaf Granny just turned her head towards him and gave him a knowing look. Robert also nodded in understanding. Then he walked up to Kai. You two go back first and wait for the news. I will inform you as soon as the investigation results are out. After Kai and the others left, Deaf Granny, with a serious expression, said to Robert,
Thomas, this is a corpse revival.
Upon hearing this, Robert was terrified. Deaf Granny said,
"What should we do now?"
After pondering for a while, Deaf Granny solemnly said,
"You go first to inform each household. Starting from tonight, do not go out under any circumstances. It seems that we are about to face a tough battle."
And on the side, Nicholas, upon hearing the term
Corpse revival,
looked full of curiosity. "What does corpse revival mean, Granny? Is it like those zombies that hop around on TV?" Deaf Granny, with a frown on her face, explained, "Corpse revival does not refer to resurrection or a resurrected corpse, but to those who have died and come back to life, running amok. They are corpses that pose a threat to the living," she said hurriedly, and quickly gave orders to a few people. They needed to hurry back to prepare and find out about corpse revival, or the villagers would be in danger. But just as Pax was comforting Deaf Granny, preparing to go home, suddenly felt something grabbing at his pant leg. He lowered his head to take a look and found that it was actually a rat squeaking loudly, as if trying to convey some message. Seeing this, Pax suddenly realized that Andrew must have something urgent to discuss with him. He quickly instructed Nicholas to escort Grandma back first.
"I have something to do,"
he said before turning around and running into the woods following the rat. And Nicholas, watching Pax run off quickly, couldn't help but be stunned.
"What's the matter with you? Do you need to go to the bathroom urgently but feel embarrassed to say?"
But Pax did not pay attention to what he said. He just ran wildly into the depths of the woods. Sure enough, Andrew had been waiting for him here for a long time. Upon seeing the situation, Pax took the lead to speak. He greeted him.
"Brother, what's up? What do you need from me?"
Andrew did not expect Pax to call him
"Brother."
He quickly clasped his hands in a salute and said,
"Pax, I'm not worthy of being called brother by you."
However, a hint of sadness appeared on his face.
"Actually, I came today to talk to you about the Thomas Corpse Revival incident. Yesterday, the children sent to find the evil ghost unexpectedly saw Thomas crawling out of his grave and heading home. But at this point,"
Andrew paused. Upon hearing this, Pax's expression changed in surprise.
"Could it be that something happened?"
Upon hearing this, Andrew could no longer control his emotions. With a face full of grief, he dragged out the lifeless body of Little Rat. When I arrived, the child's body had already gone cold. Not only was he strangled to death, but his blood had also been drained. What Andrew did not tell Pax was that this was his own son. Pax, seeing that it was because of his own relationship that led to the death of Andrew's child, couldn't bear it in his heart and reached out to gently touch the already cold little rat. "I'm sorry that my family's issues have affected you. When I go back, I will ask Grandma to set up a shrine for you in the temple. Please continue to bless Pax Village." Just saw a white light floating out of the body of Little Rat. It happily floated around Pax, occasionally making squeaking sounds. Andrew's eyes widened in astonishment at the sight, staring unbelievably at the ball of light. How could it be Seal the Spirit? He emotionally grabbed Pax's arm.
"Seal the Spirit is a spiritual blessing that can only be bestowed upon animal spiritual practitioners by an emperor or a great supernatural being," he said. "After an animal receives the Seal the Spirit, not only can it transcend its current state and become divine, but it can also break through realms without any bottleneck. I never expected that just one sentence from Pax would turn my child into the deity of incense without needing to endure 1,000 years of cultivation."
And the action just now was completely done by Pax's subconscious. He looked at Andrew, who was so excited, and couldn't help but smile slightly.
"As long as it's a good thing, it's fine. Otherwise, I would have felt guilty for a long time."
Upon hearing this, Andrew looked at the young man in front of him, suddenly filled with inexplicable respect. Even the leaders of the 5 great immortal families could not accomplish the Seal the Spirit technique, yet Pax could do it with just a few words. Who exactly is he? Just as Andrew was lost in thought. But Pax was anxious to go back.
"I will tell Deaf Granny Brother about this news. I will investigate and avenge your child,"
he said before turning and leaving. Andrew, who had just come to his senses, hastily bowed respectfully to Pax. From that moment on, he acknowledged Pax as his master. And when Pax returned home, he then told his grandma what had just happened. Deaf Granny was instantly shocked. "What? You sealed the spirit of a rat?" Upon hearing this, Pax couldn't help scratching his head awkwardly. "I don't know how it happened, but I somehow completed sealing the spirit, and that rat even followed me back to the village. It is a good thing to have the rat guarding the village." Deaf Granny immediately decided to renovate the village temple as soon as possible. "Although I don't have much savings." But Deaf Granny didn't even finish her sentence. Nicholas on the side interrupted and said, "Grandma, no need to worry about money. Just ask my dad. He's so poor now that all he has left is money." But more than repairing the temple, Pax is more concerned about the danger of Thomas' corpse revival harming the villagers. According to Andrew, Thomas came to the village after his revival. If he's not found soon, it will definitely endanger others. And Deaf Granny has protected the village for most of her life. How could she bear to see the village destroyed by the worship of evil? She immediately stood up and slammed the table, saying, "Rest assured, I have already prepared everything. I will definitely find Thomas as soon as possible and bring peace to the villagers." At this moment, the enthusiastic Nicholas, who loves to join in the fun, also got excited. He raised his hand to indicate that he would go too. But the next second, Robert directly punched him on the head. "You kid, why are you blindly trying to join in the fun? Your dad will come to pick you and Pax up for school soon." Just as he finished his sentence, Pax heard the sound of a car horn beeping outside the house. Gabriel parked the car. He then got out of the car and shouted into the house, "Nicholas, Pax, I'm here to pick you up." Upon hearing this, Pax became very worried about Thomas' corpse revival's matter, because he always felt that things were not as simple as they seemed. But for now, he couldn't be of much help either. In order not to worry his grandmother, he had to promise to go to school. However, before leaving, he did not forget to remind his grandmother, "If anything happens, please notify me as soon as possible. I will come back to help you." Deaf Granny just smiled faintly and said, "Don't worry. A mere corpse revival cannot harm your grandmother." Then Pax and Nicholas got on the car back to school. On the car, Nicholas talked to his father about the money needed to repair the temple in the village. Gabriel agreed without hesitation when he heard about it. This is a good deed that must be done to accumulate virtue. He then turned to look at Pax and asked how much money it would take to repair the temple. Pax replied with a hesitant smile, saying that his uncle had as much money as needed. Hearing this, Pax couldn't help but smile awkwardly and said, "Uncle, you don't have to be like this actually." But before he could finish speaking, Pax was drawn to the jade artifact around Gabriel's neck. Gabriel saw Pax staring at his necklace, looking quite pleased with himself. He even put the jade artifact in his mouth and kissed it. He couldn't help but praise Pax's sharp eyesight. This was dug out from our own mine. I had it appraised in the county town, and it was confirmed to be an ancient jade from the Han dynasty. After examining it in his hand, Pax couldn't discern the origin of the jade. However, it gave him a cold and uncomfortable feeling. He opened his mouth, about to ask Gabriel to take the ancient jade down. But seeing that Gabriel liked it so much, he couldn't bear to ruin his enjoyment. He decided to figure things out before talking to him. Pax and Nicholas soon returned to school. As we all know, high school courses are very intense. After all, the college entrance examination is the only chance to change the destiny for the vast majority of people. However, there was an exception in their class. That exception was Nicholas, who was so poor that he only ate and slept every day. On this day, he even wrote a love letter to his crush. After finishing writing, he nudged with his elbow. Pax, who was listening attentively in class, seemed to want to get his attention. However, Pax couldn't be bothered to respond to him. Seeing this, Nicholas helplessly lay on the table. He sighed heavily, as if he had 1,000 words to express, but no one cared to listen. Seeing his appearance, Pax was puzzled. "Why are you not paying attention in class again?" Upon hearing this, Nicholas saw Pax finally paying attention to him. However, he showed a shy expression. He wanted to speak but felt embarrassed. Seeing him like this, Pax glared at him irritably and said,
"Just say it if you have something to say. Don't hold back."
After hesitating for a long time, Nicholas blushed and finally said,
"I want to pursue Liliana in our class."
Upon hearing this, Pax was suddenly shocked.
"What? Are you sure you want to pursue Liliana?"
Nicholas immediately nodded in confirmation. He then glanced sneakily upward. I have my eyes on Liliana, who was sitting in the front row, paying close attention in class. Liliana has a big butt and big chest. Just by looking at her, you can tell she's well nourished. Nicholas then took out his letter from the desk drawer and handed the love letter that he had worked countless nights on to Pax.
"Could you please help me deliver this to Liliana?"
This left Pax utterly speechless. He repeatedly waved his hands to refuse, saying,
"You should personally deliver your own love letter. That way, you can show your sincerity."
But before Pax could finish his sentence, Nicholas then grabbed his hand and started to persuade him.
"Please, you have good grades and look handsome. Liliana will definitely accept it if you deliver it to her. But if I do it, she might just throw it in the trash. And it's class time now."
Pax was afraid of causing a bigger scene and being seen by the teacher, so he had no choice but to agree. Upon hearing this, Nicholas immediately smiled happily and said,
"You are such a good person. When you have a girl you like, I'll also come to deliver a love letter for you."
But speaking of this, Nicholas seemed to think of something. Is there a girl in our class that you like? Pax, with a blank expression, replied,
"It's only been a few days since school started. I haven't even recognized everyone. How could there be a girl I like?"
Although he said this out loud, a slender figure involuntarily appeared in his mind. Hearing this, Nicholas also smiled and agreed with Pax's point, saying,
"Ordinary girls really aren't worthy of you. In our class, there's only that one."
But before the conversation could continue, the bell for the end of class suddenly rang, interrupting Nicholas in mid-sentence. He quickly crumpled up the love letter filled with meaningless words. He stuffed the letter into Pax's hand. He blushed and pushed him from behind. "My happiness for the rest of my life is up to you." Pax suddenly felt like he was being put on the spot. Before he could say anything, the other person spoke. Nicholas immediately pushed hard. Pax's body immediately lost balance and lunged forward. It happened to be a quiet and obedient girl who walked by. She was the image in Pax's heart, the only girl he had ever been attracted to in his life. With a loud bang, Pax directly bumped into Claire at the edge of the table. Fortunately, she managed to support herself with her hands on the table corner, avoiding falling into his arms. But the close contact made it possible to hear each other's breathing. This made Pax blush instantly. He stammered and quickly apologized.
"I'm sorry, classmate, it was not intentional."
But Pax didn't notice. He was still holding his close friend's love letter. The classmate next to him, seeing this, shouted in shock,
"He's handing over a love letter. Pax is giving a love letter to Claire."
Upon hearing this, Claire blushed even more. And this voice directly confused Pax. He was about to explain. Claire broke free from his embrace and coquettishly escaped from the classroom, leaving Pax standing there dumbfounded. The perpetrator, Nicholas, witnessed this scene and smirked as he walked up to Pax's side.
"Are you reluctant to part with Claire? Are you starting to develop feelings for her?"
Nicholas teased. Pax remained silent, seemingly implying his agreement deep down in his heart. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, several weeks have passed. But since the last accident happened, Claire has always been avoiding Pax. Even if they accidentally meet, she leaves hurriedly with a flushed face and head down. This makes Pax always distracted in class, thinking it's because of his own rude behavior that scared Claire, causing him to have all sorts of wild thoughts in his mind. He wonders if Claire doesn't like him anymore. The dismissal bell suddenly rang at this moment. Nicholas, who was sitting beside him, couldn't help but joke when he saw Pax's appearance. "What are you daydreaming about? You're not thinking about Claire, are you?" Upon hearing this, Pax suddenly felt embarrassed at having his thoughts exposed. He quickly denied it, saying,
"Shut up! Don't talk nonsense!"
However, Nicholas obviously didn't quite believe what Pax said. From Pax's behavior in the past few days, he had already figured it out. He then stood up and patted Pax on the shoulder, whispering,
"I can tell that Claire is definitely interested in you. I noticed her sneaking glances at you during class."
Upon hearing this, Pax couldn't help but let his mind wander. He immediately looked up at where Claire was and stared, wanting to confirm what Nicholas had said. At this moment, Claire suddenly turned her head to look at him. Pax didn't have time to avoid her gaze, and they couldn't help but lock eyes for 3 seconds. In that instant, their heartbeats and breaths became quick and unsteady. Claire, who came to her senses, quickly blushed and averted her gaze. After a moment of contemplation, she seemed to have made a decision. She picked up a book, stood up, and walked towards Pax. Upon seeing Pax, although she was somewhat looking forward to it, she was also a little nervous. "Is she coming to see me?" And just as Pax was lost in thought, something unexpected happened. Claire blushed all over. She walked up to him. "Classmate Pax, I'm not very good at this math problem. Can you teach me?" Nicholas, who was sitting on the side, heard this and immediately exposed Claire. "Your math grades are among the top in our class. Why do you still need Pax to teach you?" Seeing Nicholas being so impudent, Pax quickly scolded him.
"Shut up! And see if I won't come back to beat you up."
As soon as he finished speaking, his attitude did a complete 180-degree turn. He reached out with a smile on his face and took the workbook from Claire's hand.
"Don't listen to his nonsense. I'll teach you. You can ask me any questions about the problems you don't understand in the future."
And the two of them gazed affectionately at each other. In the instant their eyes met, the air around them was filled with a sense of youthful ambiguity. But just then, a classmate at the door suddenly shouted,
"Pax, someone from your family is here to bring you something."
Upon hearing this, Pax was immediately startled. Could it be that something happened at home? He hurriedly ran out of the classroom, only to see Robert standing at the door with a briefcase. This left Pax extremely puzzled.
"Why are you here?"
Robert just smiled faintly and handed him the briefcase.
"The weather is getting colder. Your grandmother asked me to bring you some warm clothes."
Pax, however, took the box with a worried look on his face.
"How is grandmother? How are things in the village?"
Upon hearing this, Robert couldn't help but heave a long sigh. The red-clothed female ghost has not been captured yet. Kai has also fallen victim to the poison, and he was bitten to death alive by his own father. With this, the Thomas family is completely extinguished. Pax was suddenly shocked. Where did Thomas go after that? Robert could only shake his head helplessly. "I don't know either, but Rat told your grandma." After Kai died, Corpse Revival and Thomas were taken into the deep mountains by a red-clothed female ghost. After that, they disappeared without a trace. Hemp-clad Granny and the 5 great immortals searched with all their might, but still couldn't find their whereabouts. Moreover, Kai was a public official. His sudden disappearance has attracted a great deal of attention from higher-ups. It has put a lot of pressure on me. Pax's eyes couldn't help but flash a hint of cold light as he listened. It was that red-clothed female ghost again. After Robert finished speaking, he went back. Pax also told Nicholas everything that had happened in the village. Nicholas was not afraid after knowing this. Instead, he was a bit excited. "So, you mean there are now 2 zombies in the village?" He picked up a tree branch and gestured with it as he spoke. "You see my skills. If I also had a 40-meter-long machete, could I deal with the zombies?" Upon hearing this, Pax couldn't help but roll his eyes at him. "You just don't have to make trouble. This zombie thing is very complicated. Even Thomas and his son may not necessarily be considered as zombies. The so-called zombies are undying creatures who harbor resentment. They are afflicted with corpse poison or influenced by graveyard feng shui. The transformed corpses are known as walking corpses and can be categorized into 8 forms from low to high. The lowest level is the newly formed purple zombie, which has a purple body and barely maintains its non-rotting state. Next are the white zombie and black zombie, both with bodies and fur in white or black. They move slowly and are easy to deal with. Next is the green zombie, whose body emits green corpse gas. Although it jumps very quickly, it is very afraid of sunlight. One level higher is the haired zombie with hair growing on its body, known for its tough skin and agility. It has also started to become immune to fire and sunlight. Next is the fly zombie that has been practicing for 1,000 years, skilled in magic and invulnerability. It can fly freely in the sky. There is also the undecayed zombie, in which a certain part of its skeleton does not decay due to the injection of spiritual energy. If it absorbs the essence of the sun and moon, it will transform into the immortal floating zombie, also known as undecayed bone that lasts for 1,000 years.